What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. And as always, thank you for joining me today after a big Packers road victory over the San Francisco 49ers with some late game heroics from Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Mason Crosby. I will get into all of that and more. My name is Paul Brettel. I'm the site editor over at Dairyland Express. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. I also have a new article out every Monday and Friday over at Cheesehead TV. So, for today's podcast episode, I wanted to dive into my observations from the Green Bay Packers victory over San Francisco. In article version, you can find this over at Cheesehead TV this week. I've been doing a behind the numbers series there, taking a look at the key stats, figures that really define the performance of the Green Bay Packers in that particular game. So, find the article version there. Over at Dairyland Express, I also have snap counts and takeaways from each position group. So head over there to check that article out as well. But without further ado, let's dive into some quick takeaways from the Green Bay Packers performance on Sunday Night Football. So first, and I talked about this in an article leading up into this game, looking back at Detroit, the Green Bay Packers had 25 carries between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And again, just like against Detroit, this is a perfect illustration of how you don't have to be, ripping off these huge runs, averaging 5, 6, 7 yards a carry in order for the run game to be successful. You need the defense to respect it. You need to stick to it, but it doesn't take those huge gaudy numbers in order for it to be completely effective. And just like it was in Detroit or against Detroit, the Packers running backs averaged only 3.9 yards per carry that game. The longest run was only 9 yards, but Detroit respected that Green Bay was going to run the ball, and that led to or created openings in the passing game as well. We saw the same thing against San Francisco. This was a young, inexperienced Green Bay Packers offensive line unit. They were up against a very good defensive front, and Jones and Dillon on their 25 carries, they only averaged 4 yards per carry. Again, that's not an exorbitant amount by any means, but that does damage. That turns 1st and 10 into 2nd and 6. That's manageable. You can convert third downs when you're picking up 4 yards, 5 yards per carry, as the Green Bay Packers were in this matchup. And again, it made the 49ers, by sticking with it for the most part. There was that questionable, 3 deep balls in a row from Aaron Rodgers in the fourth quarter. But for the most part, the Green Bay Packers were able to stick with the run. And again, this was a prime example of how it doesn't have to be these huge gains in order for the run game to be effective. We saw what happened against New Orleans. We've seen it in the past as well when this offense gets away from running the ball. They need to stick to it. They need to give Aaron Jones a full workload each game. He is that good. He is that important to this offense. So I was happy to see them stick to the run. And again, 4 yards a carry, not flashy, not sexy, but that'll do just fine. Next up, let's jump to the Green Bay Packers offensive line unit. So in the previous episode, I discussed how I thought that they were going to go with Billy Turner at left tackle, Dennis Kelly at right. Green Bay ended up going with Yosh Nijman, who made his NFL start. He only had 15 career snaps in the regular season heading into this game. And outside of that first series, man, credit to Yosh. Credit to this entire offensive line unit as well. He did excellent. They did as well. This was a Niners pass rush I had mentioned. They had 52 pressures coming into the game, which was the third most in football. Now, Green Bay, of course, provided some help. Mercedes Lewis, Robert Tonyan, they were active in the blocking game as well, chipping the edge rushers, particular Nick Bosa. Aaron Rodgers also got the ball out of his hands very quickly. According to Pro Football Focus, his average time to throw was 2.04 seconds. Just over 2 seconds. For one, it's hard to get the ball out any quicker than that. Two, a pass rush has almost no chance of getting home if the quarterback's getting the ball out of his hands that quickly. So overall, it was a very good game plan by the Green Bay Packers, but also, credit to that offensive line as well. You had 2 rookies in Royce Newman and Josh Myers making their first true starts on the road. Same thing went for John Runyon. Last year, he took some snaps here and there, but it wasn't a true road environment because there weren't fans in the stands. And then Yosh made his first career start. So that entire group held up very well considering who they were up against, the environment, a short week, and again, a credit to the game plan, relying on the run game. I mentioned that would be a big part to negate the Niner pass rush. We saw that with the 25 carries, the extra blockers, the quick passing game, all very well done by the offensive line, Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, and this entire offense. Next up, Aaron Rodgers. He had 261 passing yards. In my final thoughts article, my final thoughts video that I put out heading into this game, one of the matchups, because I'm sure you all remember, is this was not a game that I expected the Green Bay Packers to win. However, one of the matchups, particularly on offense, that I did think that they could exploit was these 49er cornerbacks. They were without Jason Verrett. He is done for the season. Lenore, the fifth-round rookie, like I said, he had been solid, but still a fifth-round rookie. Josh Norman is past his prime at this point in his career. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, this receiving group, that was absolutely a matchup that they could exploit. The key, however, was Aaron Rodgers going to have enough time? And as we just discussed, for the most part, he did. Rodgers threw for 261 yards. Devontae Adams had 132 of them. And just have to say, Devontae Adams putting up 132 yards, 12 catches, I believe it was. He's so good that that's essentially routine at this point. But just a credit to him to take that huge hit as he did. Fortunately, he was all right, only missed a play, but to step up on that final drive, catching those two big passes over the middle after a big hit not that long before, that was a very special moment for Devontae Adams. Once again, just showcasing that he is the best receiver in this game. In addition to what Devontae Adams did, both Allen Lazard and MVS both had receptions of over 40 yards as well. The Green Bay Packers, they were absolutely, and Aaron Rodgers was absolutely able to take care of those San Francisco cornerbacks. Next up, Corey Bejorquez, the Green Bay Packers punter. Yes, the Green Bay Packers have a punter. He has been excellent through these first three games. Against the 49ers, he averaged 54.7 yards per punt. Of course, that is very impressive, but what makes him even more dynamic, that's the correct word to use when describing a punter. I don't think it is, but we're going to roll with it, is his ability to control the direction as accurately as he does. All three of those punts, they were on the sidelines. I believe two of them went out of bounds. One of them created a return opportunity. But when you're pinned on the sidelines, the return man, he doesn't really have many options. There's only really two places, I guess, he can go, sideways or straight forward. It makes it much easier for the return unit. So not only is Bejorquez hitting those big punts, putting up those big punting numbers, but he's accurate too. He is pinning those return men on the sidelines. This is something that I think it was after the New Orleans game or maybe after the Detroit game, Matt LaFleur had talked about when discussing Bejorquez and what makes him such a good punter. So, and getting excited about punter play isn't something that, we necessarily think of, but here in Green Bay, we are absolutely here for it. Next up, let's shift to the Green Bay Packers defense. Overall, it was an impressive performance, I have to say. They had their moments, they had their lapses, but that's to be expected to some degree. I mean, it's Kyle Shanahan. We know he's very good at drawing up plays, and we saw him reach into his bag of tricks for this matchup. There's Deebo Samuel, who had the most receiving yards among receivers heading into this game. There's George Kittle, arguably, possibly the best tight end, or at least one of the best tight ends in the game of football. And we all know how potent this 49er running game can be, especially us Packer fans. So for the Green Bay Packers to have some of those lapses, especially since it is only a third game in this Joe Barry defense, that should have been expected. Should be expected next week as well. They're going to have to work through those. But overall, this was a very solid performance. I had in the article here that the Niners averaged only 4.6 yards per play. To add a little context to that number, the Atlanta Falcons are currently averaging 4.7 yards on the season. That ranks 28th in the NFL. So obviously 4.6 yards per play is not very good whatsoever. The Green Bay Packers, they were able to get pressure on Jimmy G. I believe they had 22 recorded as far as Pro Football Focus goes. And Joe Barry, he dialed up some different blitzes, which was terrific to see. We all remember the first half of that Detroit game. Green Bay was not blitzing. They were sitting back. The Lions were able to work their way down the field relatively easily. We saw them turn things up a little bit in the second half, and that carried over to this game here. So that was fantastic to see. I love them being aggressive. Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, I think that, compared to or at least what I've seen around particularly Twitter, I thought that they played well. They didn't put up these huge flashy numbers, but they were solid. Preston Smith in particular, he was very good against the run, ended with a sack, a couple pressures, couple tackles for losses. A very nice game for him. Rashawn Gary had a sack of his own, couple pressures as well. And then Kenny Clark. We'll just dive right into the next observation here, the run defense and that interior defensive line play. We all know how damaging this 49er run game can be, especially against the Green Bay Packers. And I even said, I know that they are without Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, JaMychal Hasty, but my thought was, until I see the Packers prove that they can stop this 49er run game, I'm going to expect the 49ers to be able to run the ball. And if the Green Bay Packers didn't stop them, that's exactly what they would have done, because Kyle Shanahan would have just kept running the ball until the Packers proved that they were able to stop it, and they were able to. They held the Niners to just 3.2 yards per carry. First off, Kenny Clark, he had a very nice game against Detroit. He's building off that right now. He is ascending the way that this season is going. He was a one-man wrecking crew up front. Go back and rewatch the game. There are a number of plays where he just busted through on Alex Mack, one of the, a guy who has been one of the better centers in football in past years. And then Kenny Clark got some help. Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster, they were solid in this game. It was terrific to see. And then, as I mentioned, you got Preston Smith sealing the edge, containing on the edge in the run game. It all created a strong performance from this run defense, and something that we hopefully see them carry over into the coming weeks. And what about that final touchdown drive from Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Mason Crosby, and the rest of this Green Bay Packers team? 37 seconds. That's too much time for number 12. You can tell the 49ers, understandably so, the Green Bay Packers had no timeouts. 49ers had two main concerns. Protect the boundaries. Don't let them get out of bounds. Don't let them stop the clock. And protect deep. Obviously, don't want to give up the big play in that situation. They were hoping to make the Packers dink and dunk their way, they're willing to give up some yardage over the middle just because they don't have timeouts. They're willing to let them eat up the clock, but they connected with some big plays. First one took them from the 25-yard line to about midfield. And then after an incompletion, Aaron Rodgers put them within field goal range again, connecting with Davante Adams over the middle. That was a weak point. The Niners, like I said, they were protecting the boundaries. They were protecting deep, created a hole in the middle of the field there. And Mason Crosby, kickers, obviously, they go unnoticed for the most part. But he has been, outside of a few occasions here and there, he has been absolutely clutch during his time here in Green Bay. He entered the game having made 19 straight field goals, which was tied for the second longest streak in Packers history. He now sits at 22 kicks made in a row. And like I said, Mason Crosby, just look around the NFL each week. Look in the division, the Bears and Vikings in particular. Look at all of the missed kicks, the missed extra points that we see week in and week out. That alone, every week, we should be giving our appreciation to Mason Crosby. But him nailing that 51, 52-yarder at the end of the game against San Francisco, just another reason to really appreciate how great he has been during his Green Bay Packers career. And it's been a long one. I believe this is his 15th, 16th season now. And he continues to, he seems to just keep getting better. Next up, the major stats. I always talk about there's three very key stats that determine the game, or not solely, but play large portions in determining the game. Third down efficiency, red zone percentage, and turnover battle. We all know the Green Bay Packers won the turnover battle. On third downs, they were solid as well, converting 5 of the 11. In the red zone, they converted 3 of the 5 attempts. San Francisco was also very good in those two categories. They converted 7 of their 11 third down opportunities, and they were 4 for 4 in the red zone by finding the end zone all 4 times. So the Niners fared well in those two statistical categories, but a lot of it came down to that turnover battle. You're not going to win many games when you lose 2-0 in that category. Last couple items here. I wanted to get to some, we'll call them sneaky good performances, guys who may have flown under the radar. One of them I already touched on was Preston Smith. The other, Devondre Campbell. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on here before, but I was a huge fan of the Devondre Campbell signing. I actually wrote an article back in 2020 free agency before the Green Bay Packers signed Christian Kirksey, how I wanted him here in Green Bay. As I've said, he's not a flashy player. He's not going to turn this Green Bay Packer linebacker unit into an elite one by any means, but he is steady as a blitzer in coverage against the run. We're seeing that. He is leading the team in tackles, and tackles can be a hollow stat. We've seen that with other Packer linebackers in the past, but he is always around the ball, and he's given up completions. A lot of linebackers do, but because he's around the ball, he's limiting the play. He only gave up 5 yards per catch, and I think it was a handful of completions, according to Pro Football Focus, against the San Francisco 49ers. Devondre Campbell has absolutely been an upgrade at the linebacker position. Next up, Billy Turner. Again, going back to the offensive line, we don't talk about Billy Turner a lot anymore, and it's because he's been so good at the tackle position the last couple of years, also bringing that versatility. And then offensive line coach Adam Stenavich. Of course, the offensive line men, they deserve the credit. They're the guys on the field. They're the guys putting together these performances. But as we've seen the last couple of years, it doesn't matter who the starting 5 on the offensive line is. It doesn't matter where they're lining up, where they've been moved around to. These guys come ready to play. And that's a credit to Adam Stenavich. And that's just been an absolute home run hire that Matt LaFleur made. I know many out there in Packer Nation were upset to see James Campen go, former offensive line coach. Understandably so. He had a very, very nice career here. But Adam Stenavich, he has been excellent. Lastly, the Green Bay Packers went on the West Coast where they have struggled. We all know how the 2019 season went. Those 2 ugly losses to San Francisco, one in the NFC Championship game, one in the regular season, as well as just that bizarre, ugly performance against Los Angeles Chargers where they lost 26-11, I believe it was. They had some demons to exercise, to say the least. And as I talked about, I did not expect them to win this game. My prediction was for the 49ers to win. But even if the Green Bay Packers had lost, what I wanted to see was the energy. Because when they've gone to the West Coast, for whatever reason, outside of now this game and the 2020 game against San Francisco, where, like I said, basically the Niners JV squad because they were battling so many injuries, I wanted to see the energy. I wanted to see this team fight. And we did. They came out from the gun, and I was happy to see that they started with the ball. I felt that that was important for them. I know the Niners ended up doubling up on them, but I thought it was important for this offense to get ahead, to play with a lead, and to be the aggressor, and they absolutely were. They brought the energy. This win has to feel terrific for everyone involved, but especially Matt LaFleur being able to beat Kyle Shanahan. But the Packers, for the time being, got that monkey off their back and that big West Coast win. Those are my observations, takeaways from the Green Bay Packers performance. Obviously, there are a lot more that we could have discussed, but those are the big ones that really stick out. So, as always, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, listening in. You can find my work at Dairyland Express and She Said TV. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And as always, friends, until next time, take care, stay safe, and go Pack Go.